Hello. We are poor for Trump. Americans who are poor, and we do not believe that the Democratic Party really sincerely wants to help the poor. We believe, because of what we've seen them do for 80 years, that the Democratic Party likes to use whatever they can use to get elected and say whatever they can say to get elected. But we find that the Democratic Party is run and controlled by people who have a white racist, supremacist white racist agenda. That's what we find when we look at history and we think about it. Now, maybe we are wrong. So if you think we are wrong, please tell us and tell us why. Don't try to kill us because we disagree with you. Talk to us. And you can email us at poorfortrump@gmail.com. But you know, if you're really, really poor, you can't do it because you don't have a phone or a computer to email us from. You could go to a library and do it, but because you're black or poor, if you are, the library's not going to give you the same help that they'll give to someone who isn't black and who isn't poor. In fact, the best libraries are not in the poor black sections of town, are they? poorfortrump@gmail.com. Now, why are we for Trump? Because we have noticed that the Democratic Party controls the United States. You've seen our Grapefruit for President videos. If you haven't, look for them on YouTube. Or Google Grapefruit for President, but then you must put a minus sign and then the word choice. Then you'll see ours pop up. Otherwise, you'll just see a whole bunch of stuff about grapefruits that the president likes to eat, or the president's choice. And that won't help you any. And I don't know if it's talking about Barack Obama, or just if it's just a marketing campaign. But you know, the Democratic Party doesn't care about the poor. Let's talk about these programs that you think were enacted by the Democrats, like SSI and Section 8 and housing, public housing, and food stamps. These are all programs to help the poor, aren't they? That's not true. Poor people aren't given SSI in this country because they're poor, and certainly black people aren't given SSI because they're black and poor. People are given SSI because right now half the black population can't get work in the United States. That's the same way it was in 1929 and 1928 and 1920. And when Roosevelt became president, black people didn't have jobs. The white people got the jobs because there were 20% unemployment amongst whites, and you can't have that. But there was 60 or 80% unemployment in the blacks, and so what? It doesn't matter now, does it? And SSI, which was given out, started in the 60s. That wasn't a Democratic Party idea. It was an idea that, look, in the last 80 years, two of them, from 1952 to 54, or maybe from 54 to 56, there were only 2 years in 80 years when the Republican Party had a president and had control of Congress and had control of the Senate. And they could change the laws, and they did. the Democrats had control of Congress and the Senate and the presidency for most of Roosevelt's 15 years as president. And if they wanted to help poor black people or poor people, they could have done it. But they didn't. More and more, they used the government to oppress poor people, and that means that mostly black people were oppressed. There's more white people who are poor than there are black people. But most of the black people are poor. Not most of the white people. And people who are Democrats think if someone's poor, it's because there's something wrong with them. They don't realize that they're poor because there's something wrong with the Democratic Party, which has controlled our government. Now take a look at the cities. Take a look. The cities, most of them, there might be a few Republican-run cities that are having problems connected to racism. But there aren't very many. All the Democratic cities that are run by Democratic local city councils have problems. They have police officers who hate black people and will consider them worse than any white person in most cases. I mean, even the black police officers think black people are criminals more than they think that they're just human beings. And they've been trained to do that by the white racist Democratic parties that control the government. Look, New York City, for 80 years, 100 years, most of the city council, 20 out of 25, are Democrats. And 4 or 5, at the most 7, were Republicans. Now, if you're poor and you're black and you live in New York City, the Democratic Party has made it so expensive. The taxes are so high in buildings in New York City that the landlords have to charge $2,000 a month rent or $1,500 in the worst sections because the taxes on that property are $1,000 or $1,100 a year on the apartment, not on the building. And so they got to get a lot of money. Otherwise, they can't pay their taxes. The landlords. So Section 8 doesn't exist in New York City to help poor people have a place to live. It exists so that the poor people will stay in New York City, thinking the government's helping them. And the landlord who owns the building can get enough money to pay the taxes. So the Democratic Party can collect the taxes and use them to bribe poor people and pretend to the middle class that they're helping the poor. So the middle class will have pity on the poor and vote for the Democrats. And a few poor people vote, but not very many. And I don't blame them because, especially the poor blacks, they figure it doesn't matter if they vote or not. Whatever happens is going to be bad. But the Democrats are running the city. The Democrats are running the courts. The Democrats in New York State use poor black people to fill the prisons with so that Democrats upstate can have jobs paid for to imprison poor black people. And that's what they do. And they've been doing it for they've always done that. There's always more black people in the jails than there is white. And proportionately, there should be more white people and not too many blacks. What's going on here? And this is being done by the Democratic Party, not the Republican Party. The Republican Party, in the 2 years when Eisenhower was president, he was president for 8 years. But most of the time, there was a Democratic Congress and Senate. So he had to fight with them to help the poor, because the Democrats wouldn't help the poor, because that meant they were going to be helping the blacks. And half the Southern Democrats hated the blacks. They strongly hated the blacks. And if the Northern Democrats would do something to help the poor, which means they were helping the blacks, the Southern Democrats wouldn't like it. They might leave the party. They might not vote for the Democratic presidents. So when the Republican Party in the 50s, when the war was over, and of course it wasn't enough for the Democrats to arrange things so we had World War II, Roosevelt kept saying, well, we won't have a war. I hate war. He said that. And then he brought us into the worst war that we ever had, except for the Civil War, but it still was the worst war. 60 million people died. 60 million persons died because the Democratic Party from 1920 to 1930 to 1940 said about Hitler, well, he can't be that bad. Just be nice to him and everything will be fine. While Hitler's writing books about how he hates Jews, he wants to kill them all. The solution to the problem is to get rid of the Jews and to get rid of the gays and to get rid of the blacks. He hated the black people. Now, they called it appeasement. The Social Democrats in Europe, especially in Britain, and the Democrats in the United States said, oh, there's no problem. Even though Hitler was building tens of thousands of fighter jets, fighter planes, not jets, and bombers, and ships and warships and guns and bullets, making hordes of them. And then they said, well, we're not going to have a war. We just need to protect ourselves. They were liars. But the Democrats thought they were telling the truth. Well, they didn't think they were telling the truth. The Democrats like wars. They get us into wars. They got us into the Second World War by not letting the Republicans in office so they would go over in the 30s and kill Hitler when he didn't have any power. And they would have done it. But oh, no, appeasement. Read your history books. And then the Depression came. And how did Roosevelt get elected? By Huey Long, who was very popular, and other politicians who talked about having a chicken in every pot. Roosevelt used the federal government money to buy chickens and give a chicken to every poor family in the United States. And some poor families were given more chickens, but most were given one. And they were using the federal money to bribe people so they would vote for the Democrats, which was against the law. But if a Republican would do it, it's against the law and the media will press it, and it'll be a crime and a horrible thing. But when the Democrats do it, because the Democrats wanted to end prohibition, they wanted people to be able to drink alcohol. Why did we make prohibition in this country? Because of cars. Before there were cars, people could get drunk all they wanted, and very, very few people riding with a horse or a horse and a wagon are going to run someone over because they're drunk. But when you're driving a car, even the old cars, people were getting killed because people were drunk and driving the car. And the United States, progressive conservatives thought, well, we either need cars or we need alcohol, but we shouldn't have both. And since alcohol tended to ruin the lives of the people who get addicted to it, they thought, well, let's get rid of the alcohol. And they did. And then the Democrats, the media, the newspapers wanted booze. And Hollywood wanted booze. Every movie you see that was made in Hollywood promotes booze by showing booze as a glamorous thing, and promotes cigarette smoking because they were being fed money by the people who make booze and make cigarettes. So the poor people and the common people will go out and buy them and use them and make those people rich. And they complain about people making guns to make money, that they're going to promote the violence. But guns don't kill people. Persons kill other persons using a gun. And if they don't have a gun, they'll get a club and beat them over the head. And if they don't have a club because they're too poor, they'll find a rock and they'll smash it over their head. And now it's absolutely true. A gun makes it a whole lot easier and simpler to kill someone. But I'll tell you what, the reason that Hitler was able to run through Europe and go through every city and kill everybody and take everything over easily is because nobody had any guns to shoot back. And the Democrats, the Republicans pretend we need guns so people can hunt. We don't need guns in this country so people can hunt. And we shouldn't use guns to kill other human beings. It's wrong. But gosh, we need guns. Because when people like Hillary Clinton and the Democrats do like Hitler did, and they will do it, and decide to convince you that it'd be better off if you just let the Democrats be in charge forever and they'll solve all the problems. That's what Hitler did. And make you get rid of your guns. They do it in every Democratic-run city in the United States. They try to take the guns away from the black people, which you have a right to have a gun. Not to kill someone if they try to rob you, but so when the government comes and tells you that you are now the government has authority over you, that you'll say, no, you don't. We, the people, have authority over the government. We got the very same thing happening right now with this Obamacare medical business. That isn't Obama's. Obama didn't make that. Hillary Clinton made that, and the same crooked, white, racist Democrats that control that party made it. And they've arranged it so there's enough white racists in the Republican Party now so that they won't fight it. Whatever the Democrats want to do is okay. And the Democrats are in party. They don't ask the Republicans to agree with them. They plow through and do what they want, just like they did with Obamacare, even though most Americans didn't want it. And even though they don't even know who knows what's in the Obamacare law? 8 years, and people don't know what's in that law. You don't know what's in that law. You don't. I know some things in that law that are very, very bad because of my personal experience with health problems. And if you knew what they were, you would not like Obamacare. Whether you're white or black or poor or middle class, you wouldn't like it. Because it excludes you from getting the same services that rich people can buy. Except now, the social medicine will make it illegal for rich people to buy their own care. Instead, they have to give the money to the government, and the government's going to pay for everyone's care. That's crooked, rotten, dishonest, and un-American. Everyone should have health care. Well, yes, but who's going to pay for it? Who should pay for it? Who? And there isn't going to be enough to go around if everyone gets health care, because as soon as you're not paying for your health care, you will take as much as you can get and not care how much is spent until the money is all spent and there's none left. There's no more rich people to tax. And so you can't get any help. It's crazy. It's wrong. It's un-American. And the people who suffer the most are the poor, whether they're white or black. The poor people suffer. Poor people don't go to SSI to help the poor people. It's so there won't be a third of the population with no money to spend. You get your SSI, most of you, spend it in 2 weeks, and then you don't have any money for 2 weeks. Because you won't want to be responsible with the money you get. You look for every way to get money you shouldn't get because you're getting welfare. That's what SSI is, it's welfare. But it's not enough to help you, but you will go out and buy the most expensive foods rather than be careful, unless you're a poor black grandmother who's lived a while, and then you're very careful with your money. But no other Americans are careful with their money. They're not. Not the middle class, not the rich. Well, the rich are very careful how they spend money. That's why they're rich. Not because they make a lot of money, but because they understand the purpose of money. And the purpose of money is that you save it, and then you can use it to make jobs for people. In order to have a job, somebody has got to spend a lot of money to create that job. If any job in the world costs about $50,000 to $100,000 to make that job. If someone wants to hire you to work in an office, they have to build the building, rent the office, and that's a lot of money. Then they can hire you to work there. And why would anybody do that with their money if when they make a profit, they're going to have to give half of it away? Why would they do it? They will say, well, let's not make any money and let's all go on welfare. A rich person can become poor in a few hours or a few weeks or a few days. And they can all go on welfare. And then who's going to pay the taxes for the Democratic Party so they can keep the poor poor and make everyone poor? Look, Section 8 doesn't help the people who get Section 8. It allows the landlords to keep the rents high, so everybody else who isn't poor has to pay high rents. If you took all the Section 8 out of New York tomorrow, within 3 months, the rents would be half of what they are, and there'd be a problem because the building owners couldn't have enough money to pay the taxes. And the taxes are there because of the rotten, crooked, white, racist Democratic Party that controls that city and every other city in the country. And if you are poor, you're not supposed, anyone who pays more than a quarter of their income for rent is going to become homeless. And the Section 8 and the public housing wants you to give a third of your income to them for your rent. That's what they want. Which means you're permanently going to be poor. You'll never, ever have enough money to get yourself out of poverty. Even if you want to drive a limousine or a taxi, you've got to have the money to buy the taxi. Or you can't drive it. And that's a lot of money. Why? Because the Democrats take the money in taxes and fees and everything else so they could give it to poor people and bribe them and make the middle-class people think the Democrats are doing something for them. And all the Democrats are doing is stealing money from hardworking people to give it to people who the Democrats don't want to let them have a job. Why can't you have a job if you live in the inner city? Because the Democratic government is stupid. And they would rather give you money, let you live in poverty, and keep you from participating in the economy. The Republicans aren't for the rich. The Republicans are for poor people to be able to get out of poverty. And the Democrats aren't for the poor. They're for the middle class. They pretend they are. But no, they're not. Therefore, whatever they can say and do to get elected so they can get paid to be career politicians. That's why Trump is running for office. He doesn't need to be president. But both the Democrat and the Republican Party are run by career politicians who are crooks. And they're all white racists. They hate poor people and they hate the blacks. And they, no matter which party's in charge, the 78 years the Democrats were in charge and 2 years the Republican. Well, you know, the federal government only took a state to court to force the state, Arkansas, to let black children go to the white school when Eisenhower was president and when the Senate and Congress had a majority of Republicans, which was for 2 years or a few years. And then the Democrats took over again. And the Democrats figured out that pretending they cared about the poor was a great way to get more votes. And then all the white racists in the Democratic Party left and went to the Republican Party. But the Republican Party doesn't like them, doesn't want them. The Republican Party hates racism. It was founded to end racism. But if all the black people vote for the people who want racism, and that's what they'll do, or they'll act like they think they should be elected, and then all the middle class people think, oh, wow, isn't that wonderful? But it's not wonderful. People, you don't have a democracy by voting. Now look, email us at poorfortrump@gmail.com and you'll get an auto response with a long document that'll tell you what we're talking about. Go to YouTube and put in grapefruit for president. And you'll see a dozen videos we put in there that nobody's looked at because we're poor and we don't count. Poor people don't count in this country. Poor people, black or white, do not matter. And middle class people are mostly poor anymore, and so they don't really matter. Except they tend to vote, and the Democrats know how to lie, cheat, and steal, and convince them that the Democrats can solve the problems. But for 80 years, 78 out of 80 years, they haven't solved any problem. They just found ways to use government money to make it look like they're helping the poor. Food stamps don't help the poor. Well, it does because they eat the food. But the food stamps allow all the poor people to shop, and that helps the store owners and the food producers. And it keeps the economy running. That's why they have food stamps. They used to give that money straight to the farmers, so the farmers could make money whether they grew stuff or not. And then they thought, well, let's give it to the poor and let them spend it in the store, and it'll end up in the farmers' hands. But they still give the farmers money to grow corn, which is a poison. But they think it's good for you, but it isn't. Look, vote for Donald Trump or vote for this grapefruit. Do not vote for the Democrats. If you're poor and black or poor and white, go register with the Republican Party. Email us, poorfortrump@gmail.com. Let us start a movement where we, the poor people in this country, save this country, because it's going to be destroyed. If it may be destroyed anyway, because Obama and Hillary Clinton gave the atomic bomb to the Iranians. And the Iranians would love to kill Jews, gays, and black people. They would love to do it. And where are they going to do it? New York City, Philadelphia, Chicago, Cleveland. And they'll kill Hollywood because of all the Jews there that they hate. Look, wake up, America. Wake up, poor Americans. Save this country. It's wonderful we had a black man for president. But it's terrible that he was a Democrat and a puppet of the white racists who control the Democratic Party and make you think that they control the Republican Party, but they don't. We need more poor people and black people to vote for Republicans and participate so we can end this hundreds of years of racism and oppression of poor people who are mostly black in our country. poor4trump@gmail.com. I'm poor, and I would like to see Donald Trump be elected. I think he will solve our problems.